What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's video is brought to you by our new channel sponsor, International MTG. If you're looking for competitive pricing on your favorite MTG cards, old and new, be sure to check out the International MTG store and TCG Player, link in the description of this video. As well as our second channel sponsor, the Hobby Horse in Taylorville, Illinois. If you're ever in town, be sure to stop in and say hi to Martin. On this week's episode of Not Your Average Meta, we're bringing you another fun game we filmed down at the Hobby Horse in Taylorville, Illinois. This week's matchup features Martin playing his combo-centric Selesnya deck, being led by Shalai, Voice of Plenty, Patrick barring Fog's Rith Liberated Primeval excess damage deck, Fogral playing his Voltron Krenko Street Kingpin deck, and Foil returning playing his newly built Tekuthal Inquiry Dominus Proliferate deck. Now that we have our fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck will come out on top. Turn 1, Fog plays a mountain. Foil draws for turn and then plays an island before casting that sweet turn 1 Soul Ring straight into a pair of Swiftfoot boots. Martin plays a forest before Patrick plays a mountain of his own. Fog plays a second mountain while Foil plays another island and then taps out to cast his commander. Martin plays a plains and then taps out to cast a Duskwatch Recruiter while Patrick just plays a mountain. Fog plays a third mountain before tapping out to cast his commander Krenko and passing his turn. Foil draws and then casts Jace Cunning Castaway. He then upticks Jace, targeting his commander before he then pays to equip his commander with the Swiftfoot boots. He then goes to combat, swinging Tekuthal at Patrick for 3 commander damage, which has him drawing a card and discarding a card while Martin untaps for turn. Martin draws for turn and then plays another plains before paying 3 and throwing down a commander sphere. Patrick plays a Canopy Vista for turn before paying 3 and casting a Dragon's Horde. Fog plays another mount for turn before paying 3 for a Hobgoblin Bandit Lord. He then goes to combat, attacking Foil with Krenko. This then adds a counter to Krenko and deals 3 commander damage to Foil while he creates 3 Goblin tokens. Foil draws and plays another island before he pays 4 for a Solemn Simulacrum, which has him going into his library to get a land to put into play tapped. Foil then upticks Jace again, targeting the Solemn and passes. Martin plays another forest for turn before tapping out and casting his commander Shalai. Patrick plays a forest for turn and then also has enough mana to tap out and cast his commander Rith. Fog plays a mount for turn and then casts Unleashed Fury to double the power of Krenko until the end of turn. He then goes to combat, attacking Martin with Krenko, which adds an additional counter and has Martin taking 7 commander damage while he creates 7 Goblin tokens. After combat, Fog pays to use the Bandit Lord and deals 7 damage to Foil's face. On his end step, Foil takes counters off of Jace and pays 4 life in order to put an indestructible counter on Tekuthal. Foil plays an island for turn before paying to cast a Vivisurgeon's Insight, which has him drawing 3 cards before he proliferates all of his counters, along with Patrick's Dragon Horde counter. He then upticks Jace, targeting the Solemn and passes. Martin draws and plays another plains before tapping out and casting Ashiya's Soul of the Wild. Patrick draws and plays a forest before casting Infectious Bite, which has each of his opponents getting a poison counter, while he chooses to have Rith fight the Bandit Lord. In response, Fog casts a Bullpen in order to change the target from the Bandit Lord to Martin's commander. Patrick then casts Mina and Den Wildborn before playing a second land for turn and going to his instep, creating a dragon token. Fog plays a mount for turn and then goes to combat, swinging Krenko at Martin, once again adding an additional 1/1 counter, while he swings his Goblin tokens at Patrick. Before damage is dealt, Fog casts You See a pair of Goblins to pump up his Goblin tokens, which then has him creating 5 more Goblin tokens while Patrick declares blockers, but still takes 28 damage, going down to 9 life. Second main, Fog activates the Bandit Lord once again, shooting Martin for 5 damage to the face. He then casts Bitter Reunion to discard a land and draw 2 cards before passing his turn. Foil draws and then casts a Mission Briefing, which has him surveilling 1 card to his library and keeping a card on top. He then pays to recast his Vivisurgeon's Insight, which has him drawing 3 new cards while he proliferates the counters on all of his permanents and also the poison counters on both of his opponents. He finally plays an island for turn and passes. Martin plays a forest and then casts an Invasion of Ikoria where X is equal to 5. He then goes into his library to get an Argothian Elder, which he puts into play. Martin then cracks his command sphere and waits for Foil to cut his deck before he draws a card. He then goes to combat, swinging Ashiya at his battle, which has it exiling itself and then returning to play as Zalartha, Apex of Ikoria. Patrick plays a mount for turn before removing a counter off his Dragon's Sword in order to draw another card. He then casts Nahiri's Warcrafting, targeting the Bandit Lord. This then has the Bandit Warlord getting sent to the graveyard and Patrick exiling the top 2 cards of his library because of the excess damage. He then decides to keep the Cathartic Pyre before bottoming the other card and casting the Cathartic Pyre in order to destroy one of Fogg's goblins. Fogg then remembers some of his goblins should have died because of combat before he then destroys another one because of the Cathartic Pyre. Patrick then casts a Rampant Growth to go get a land from his library while Fogg combines all of his goblins and untaps for turn. Fogg then plays a mountain and goes to combat, attacking Foil with Krenko, which adds a counter to Krenko and has him creating 5 more goblin tokens, while Foil chump blocks with the Solemn in order to draw a card. Second main, Fogg casts a Goblin War Strike targeting Martin, trying to take him out of the game before he can combo off. This then only takes him down to 5 life and he passes turn. Foil draws, then plays a Merchant Scroll in order to go get an instant from his library. He then casts the Experimental Augury that he tutored for, which has him looking at the top 3 cards of his library and putting one into his hand while the rest go on the bottom. He then proliferates all the counters before. He then casts Prologue to Phyresis, which has him drawing a card while each of his opponents get a poison counter, and he casts a Thrumming Bird. Martin plays a Forest for turn and then demonstrates to the table how with a Shy in play, turning all of his permanents into forest, that he can tap all of his lands and use his Elder to untap itself in order to create infinite green mana. He then recasts Shalai and then shows the table how he can pump up all of his creatures an infinite amount of times, before he then goes to combat, swinging a creature each of his opponents to win the game. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe in order to see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.